For most people, their home is a place where they feel safe. Its protective walls and facade of security allow them to draw comfort and feel as though they are separated from the things that wish to do them harm. However, I am here to tell you that this is not reality. There are things that wish to do us harm that thrive in the dark, seldom used corners of our homes. Things that go bump in the night. I lived under the comforting blanket of self-produced ignorance for most of my life, though that all changed about a year ago. It started out as a normal Saturday afternoon. I was sitting on my back porch, researching for a school project, enjoying the weather outside, when I noticed a shadow out of the corner of my eye. As I turned my head, it seemed to vanish. I simply wrote it off as a trick of the light, as most sane people would do. It soon drifted out of my mind, and I continued on with my day as normal until around dinner time. I was standing in my kitchen listening to music while I cooked. Then I heard a quiet scratching coming from down the hallway. It was faint, and I almost didn't hear it over the sound of my music. But it was there. Now, living on my own with no pets to speak of, I obviously stopped my music and waited a few seconds to listen for it yet again. After around a minute, I heard it again, though longer and closer this time. I put the burner on the stove down and walked down the hallway to investigate, only to find it empty. I checked the rooms closest where I thought the noise had come from, only to find them empty and tranquil. I went back to cooking, and the night continued on as normal. These strange occurrences continued for a few weeks on and off, always getting written off as a shadow or a rat in the walls. However, one night, while lying in bed trying to go to sleep, I woke up to a creaking of one of my stairs going up to my room. I thought there might be an intruder, so I went for the small sidearm I keep in my bedside table, and I crept over to the doorway of my room. I stood in silence for what seemed to be an eternity, though must have only been 5 minutes, till I finally mustered up the courage to investigate. I gently pushed open my bedroom door to stare down the black abyss that was my hallway. I decided it would be best to check the whole house for this supposed intruder. I began to go from room to room, ready to fire at a moment's notice, only to discover the whole house empty. There was only one more place left to check, the basement. As I pushed open the door to the small unfinished room down those stairs, I heard a giggling coming from within. That was the breaking point. I lost the semblance of nerve I had remaining and ran outside and got into my car. I sat there in the brisk autumn air in the middle of the night, staring at the house I used to view as a safe haven. I slept in my car that night. The next morning, I had a friend come over to search my house with me. Yet again, the whole house turned out to be empty. With the safety brought by the daylight and being with another person, I found the courage to brave the search of the basement. I descended the unfinished wooden stairs into a dirt room that stank of mildew and dry rot. I navigated the room through the stacks of long-forgotten belongings and decorations of holidays long past. Found a handprint in the dirt, though it was not of an adult, but rather it was large and had long, bone-thin fingers that seemed to be like something out of a horror movie, not reality. I called my friend over, and we took a few photos, and we left the basement feeling more unsettled than before. I spent the rest of the day scouring the internet, trying to find any idea what this handprint belonged to, only to be met by a complete lack of answers. I went to bed that night feeling slightly defeated, having not found anything. As I turned off my bedside lamp and began to drift off to sleep, I was awoken by what seemed to be a tapping of nails on the door of my room. I decided it would be best to stay as still and quiet as possible, as to not alert whatever was in my hallway that I had heard it. After a few minutes had passed, I heard the door begin to creak open, ever so slowly. I stared into the inky black abyss and saw a hand curled around my door near the top. The hand was deformed and grotesque, with long, spindly fingers reminiscent of spider legs. The black, leathery skin was pulled taut over the hand's slender bones. Out of the darkness of the doorframe emerged a skeletal, featureless face. I stared in horror at where there should have been eyes, only to see smooth, tight skin stuck to an equally smooth and featureless skull. My gaze shifted to its mouth, if it can even be called a mouth. There was a thin slit surrounded by sinewy tissue, coated in what appeared to be dried blood, caked onto its skin. The creature itself had skin so dark that it nearly blended in with the surrounding shadows, though it was still distinguishable. It began to step into the room, and when it stood up, its head was hunched forward as it was too tall for the room it found itself in. As it began to step closer, I felt an overwhelming, deep-seated dread, and then nothing. I woke up in the morning to discover my room empty, door closed, no sign of the abomination that had occupied it with me the night before. After that incident, I began to research yet again, this time with knowledge of how the creature looked. The research proved to find a few small online communities with people who had claimed to see the same creature in their room or home late at night. They had many theories on what it could be, ranging from a demon to some form of humanoid cryptid creature. All I knew was that I had to get it out of my house. I tried in vain for weeks to find the thing during the daylight hours, to no avail. I had scoured every corner of my home, though no matter what I did, it came back night after night, getting closer and closer to my bed. Before I would remember nothing. I began to not sleep in the hope it would go away. I would go out all night, doing anything and everything I could do to avoid going home. But no matter what I did, it would happen right as I began to fall asleep. I started having nightmares almost every night, and it was always the same. I would be in a dark forest, devoid of moonlight or starlight, and I would hear its nails tapping on the trees just outside of where I could see. Then the screaming would start. Low at first, though it would raise in pitch until it was unbearable. The sound was indescribable. It was one of sheer pain and agony, unlike anything I have heard before. Then out of nowhere, the screaming would stop just as suddenly as it had began. I would see a child sitting in front of me, half-cloaked in the darkness, and it would begin to morph and disfigure until it was the thing I saw in my bedroom every night. And it would just stare at me until I woke to see the sun peering through my windows. After months of this process continuing in the same fashion, it came to a head last night. I fell onto my bed, defeated, knowing what was coming, and it seemed would always come. Every night I went to sleep. I turned off the light, having learned long ago the light wouldn't stop the thing. It would simply shut off on its own as the door creaked open. My head hit the pillow and the same sick ritual began again. The tapping, the creaking of the door, the emaciated, immensely tall figure creeping towards me with its disfigured limbs, until nothing. I did not have the dream last night, though I woke on a cold, hard surface in a pitch-black room. I felt around in horror, realizing I was on dirt. I was in the basement. I tried to move my legs, only to find that I had no control of them. I could feel nothing. As I sat there, panicked, I heard dirt shifting on the other side of the basement. Began to drag myself frantically, searching for something to defend myself with, only to feel a step, a way out. Began to pull myself up the stairs as I heard the creature start moving faster across the dirt behind me. I was almost there. I could see the sunlight peeking underneath the door. I felt the door with my hand and began to pull myself up to the handle, only to feel a cold, piercing pain in my stomach. I looked down to see its spider-like fingers dig into my abdomen. My vision began to go pinpoint as I was pulled helplessly back into the void, each step seeming to take any hope I had left away. I felt the same icy pain in my arm, and then my back, and then I felt nothing. I woke up an hour ago on my basement floor, completely intact, save red marks where the thing's fingers had dug into my flesh. I don't know what this thing is, I don't know how I am still alive, but night is coming, and I feel it preparing to return. If you find this, know I was taken. I don't know by what, but I know tonight will not end as well as last night. I don't think I'm going to survive to see the sun again. Just need you to know, we are not as safe as we may think. Your home may protect you from the perils of the outside world, but it harbors its own dangers. We are never truly safe, never truly alone.